Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our podcast, Listen to Lisa. Pleasure to have you along for the ride. And joining me today is a special guest. It is the Sedgwick County Director of Emergency Management, Julie Stimson. Julie, thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You are pretty busy, so I'm glad that you had a couple of minutes to come and see us because this is a busy week for all of us that are in the weather enterprise. It is Severe Weather Preparedness Week. Tell me what you and your staff are doing for this special week in Kansas.
So this week, my staff and we are going out and just talking to folks about severe storm preparedness, reminding everyone what our risks are here. We're engaging in conversations. We're also giving the presentations throughout the majority of the cities here in Sedgwick County. We partner with the National Weather Service. The National Weather Service provides a presentation on storm weather safety, and we are able to deliver that same message to cities throughout our county.
And this is what the whole entire week will look like. Every single day, there is a certain topic. Like, for example, today, Monday, it is all about preparedness. Tuesday, it'll be about flood safety. Wednesday, tornado safety. Thursday, hail wind safety. And Friday, lightning safety. And as we saw with the wildfires that happened last month, that's another thing that you can kind of add into this. Now we're starting to step away from our wildfire season and get into our spring severe weather season. And it's going to be a busy week this week in Kansas because we do have a few opportunities for severe weather. And Julie, I have to ask you, what exactly is emergency management? Aside from going out and doing these presentations, what else do you do for our community?
So when things happen in our community, when disasters do happen, we coordinate resources. Our job is to kind of understand what our capabilities here are within Sedgwick County. And when folks need help that we're not able to provide, we work with our state and federal partners, and we try to bring in additional resources to help folks respond and recover from disasters. We do all hazards planning. It's not just weather. It's not just tornadoes. Anything that can pretty much disrupt our community and our ways of lives, that's what we're preparing for.
And Julie, how long have you been in the position of Sedgwick County's emergency management?
Just over 5 years now.
And 5 years, you were definitely put to the test back on April 29th, 2022. Take me back to that day. That was the day that we had the Southeast Wichita and Andover tornado.
Yep. So that day, we had several days heads up that we were potentially going to have a severe weather day. A lot of folks were telling us the ingredients were coming over to have potential tornadoes. We were hearing those dreaded words of long track, strong tornadoes. So we were on high alert all day long, watching, KSN and our news networks, working with the National Weather Service, monitoring radars, and then just talking to folks and letting people know to, hey, be aware. Later in that afternoon, early evening, we were expecting the ingredients to come together to create some significant thunderstorms and that tornado risk. Ironically, that morning, my staff and we were conducting a workshop on business preparedness, helping small businesses and large businesses prepare for disruptions. And then later that evening is when we had that tornado nicked our county and then did significant damage in Butler County and the city of Andover.
But also, as an emergency manager, you worked closely with Butler County's emergency management team. How did that go?
Yes, absolutely. So in South Central region, there's actually 19 counties that make up the South Central region. And all of the emergency managers get together on a bi-monthly basis, sorry. And we build those relationships. A lot of times, we don't have large departments to manage the scales of disasters that happen. So we have to rely on each other to offer support. And in that tornado in 2022, Butler County and Sedgwick County, we worked very much in tandem. We treated that incident as a single incident. We pretty much pretended that there wasn't a county line, and we just coordinated resources and took care of everyone that was impacted.
And I have to say, with emergency management here in Sedgwick County, and this is other counties across Kansas, you guys are there before, during, and after a storm. Tell me about the before. And I'm smiling because I have close experience with this one, but I want you to tell who these folks are.
Yes. So before, exactly what we're doing like right now with Severe Weather Preparedness Week, working with the National Weather Service, and just getting out in front of folks and educating what are our weather risks, especially here with tornadoes, but not even just tornadoes, but also straight line winds and the flooding and the hail. We get all kinds of weather here in Kansas. Um, but yeah, preparedness is how our communities get strong when we are prepared and we can handle what comes our way and recover and respond quickly. Um, During the disasters, again, we're keeping an eye on what our capabilities are and what resources are needed. We want to get the right things to the right place at the right time. And then you mentioned that recovery is another phase of disasters, and that's where the cameras are off and our folks are still recovering. A lot of times it's long-term recovery. It could take years. The tornado in 2022 did take years to recover. And we, as emergency managers, we're in it for the long haul. We don't just turn our backs when the response is over. We make sure folks get what they need to get back on their feet.
And you also have an incredible team backing you up within emergency management, but you also have a lot of volunteers too, because before that storm hits, you have storm spotters that are out with RACES that are pinpointed in different locations within the county, relaying that information back to you all. And then when you guys come out, you guys send that information to us. And my dad is one of your storm spotters. And before that, it was my grandpa. And, so much of my family has been tied in with the county here.
Yep. A lot of folks realize they rely on technology too much, where we think that, everything that we're seeing on our phones and on our computers is what's happening on the ground. And there are limitations with that. So we absolutely need our volunteers, our RACES volunteers, our storm spotters to tell us what is at the ground level. Radars have limitations on what they can see, especially locations that are close to the radar site. So when we have weather alert days, when we know there's a chance of tornadoes, we will activate our RACES team, our amateur radio team, who goes out and spots for us and reports what they are actually observing at their location. And then we do relay that information to the National Weather Service and to our media partners. We have a platform called Slack that we use that we can upload videos, photos, and we can do pretty much real-time reporting on what's being observed on the ground.
And going back to storm spotters, this I have said time and time again whenever I'm at a school talk or talking or giving some type of weather presentation. Even in this day and age and what the future of AI is going to bring, it is still never going to be able to beat the eyes and the ears of having somebody at that location. Because like you said, radar, yeah, we've seen how radar has been able to evolve over the decades, but you're still talking about the areas that is closest to the ground where we are all located. And then if you get where that radar site is and you look up, you have nothing, which I know there are some radar companies that are out there that are going to be using AI here in the next future that's going to help to fill that in, but they're gathering a lot of studies of other thunderstorms to see how they behave in order to try to compensate for that. When it comes to during the storm and when you have activated your operations, tell us what that is like.
So when we do know that we had impacts in our county, we will activate our Emergency Operations Center. We call it our EOC, and that brings in a lot of our community partners who will be responding to that disaster site. Our fire, our EMS, our law enforcement officials, hospitals. We actually have representatives from our hospitals that are in our EOC to at least when they're doing those life safety measures to give us a read of how bad things are. When we know we have a lot of damage, such as we did in the 2022 tornado, we'll bring in other partners such as Public Works, our GIS mapping folks. We'll bring in utilities. We'll bring in even our mental health partners, our American Red Cross partners, United Way. It's a big room where we're all getting a situational assessment of what's happening, how big are the impacts, and again, with the goal of coordinating resources to get the stuff out there that our first responders need, that our citizens need to respond to the disaster area.
And I know going back to the Greensburg tornado back in 2007, Sedgwick County Emergency Management did respond and helped out with that. So even if it's not something that's just here in Sedgwick County, you guys are partners with other counties all across this state. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. The state of Kansas, we have a mutual aid system that it's, again, in a larger scale of things, it's coordinating resources. So if there's something going on in the county nearby or even across the state, we're going to coordinate with the Kansas Division of Emergency Management, which is up in Topeka, to get, again, the right resources to the right location. If that's resources is personnel, if it's fire trucks, if it's ambulances, we're going to coordinate with that local emergency manager and help get those things that they need so that way they can respond and recover from the disaster.
When you stepped into the role of becoming an emergency manager, what was that like? Because I could only imagine that it might have been a little bit overwhelming because, here you are, Julie, you are in the severe weather Super Bowl of the whole entire world.
Yes, very intimidating. It's exciting and it's scary at the same time. When I joined, it was actually right in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and we were dealing with that, of course. And then, ironically, what really put me in the spotlight first was some of the earthquakes that we were having in the fall of 2020. And then we had extreme cold in February of 2021. So in my mind, I'm thinking I'm in Kansas, I'm in Sedgwick County, I'm just going to be dealing with storms and tornadoes. And that was almost the last thing that I had to respond to. Um, and again, not just tornadoes, but I've experienced under my watch. Well, we talked about wildfires, flash flood emergencies that we had last year, straight line wind damage. We had the 105, I believe it was measured at wind gusts. That was straight line wind, wasn't a tornado. And then we had large hail last year that did damage. So there's a lot of things that can disrupt our lives beyond just what people think in Kansas of saying, oh, it's just Tornado Alley. There's a lot of things that keep us busy.
One thing that's going to keep you guys busy, and I know it keeps you guys busy all the time, is making sure that all of our radars are up, or not radars, but our sirens here in the county are all updated. And people don't realize, because I used to work in Kansas City, and in Kansas City, we used to test the tornado sirens every Wednesday. It was the first Wednesday of the month, and that was it. But you guys test the tornado sirens every Monday at noon, as long as the weather is just fine. This week, because of Severe Weather Preparedness Week, it's going to be held on Wednesday at 10 a.m. It is a joint effort from Kansas over to Missouri, because they always try to do that with the Kansas City Metro. But tell me a little bit about the reason why you guys need to make sure that you test those tornado sirens every single week.
Um, we we definitely want to make sure that they're in working order. They are devices, mechanical devices for the most part, out in the community, and they're just like vehicles. You hope your car starts every morning before you go to work. Well, we want our tornado sirens to sound when they need to sound, but they require some maintenance. And there's some things that, no system is 100% perfect 100% of the time. So we know there's going to be some mechanical issues that we'll need to tend to, and we want to identify that before a tornado does occur. So we do it every week. And it's a smaller test. It's a 1 to 2 minute actual test. On Wednesday, we're going to treat it like it is a real tornado warning, and they will go off for the full 5 minutes as they would in an actual tornado.
Going back to the 1950s, early 1950s, I'm going to talk about 1952 in particular. We had the air raid sirens that were put into play across the whole entire country. President Truman said, okay, we use this technology, the atomic bomb, on another country. We don't want that technology used on us. Well, in 1952, we had all these Thunderbolt sirens that were put in across the country. And we still use some of these Thunderbolts today in Sedgwick County. If you go up toward Park City over by the casino, you look up at the firehouse and you can see a refurbished Thunderbolt siren, which is just absolutely amazing. But also, as far as we know, the first world use of a tornado warning device using those air raid sirens happened here in Wichita, right?
Yes. We were able to actually find we did some historical archives with some friends across the country. Our Thunderbolt sirens have a following. They are what we claim to be the oldest continuously operating Thunderbolt devices in the world. They've been in the ground since 1952, 1953, and they still operate today. We have 3 of them that we actually refurbished that are in the ground, that are part of our system, that are tested every Monday. And then we have another model that we have put onto a flatbed trailer that we can take out to events and parades and show folks what this Thunderbolt siren can do. We have a button, you can actually push it and activate it. course, we control the temperature. We don't want to blast people's ears out. But it's a very neat historical piece. 1958 was the first time it was used for an actual tornado, and it was a decision made by a Wichita police officer here in Wichita that pretty much changed the way that we've been using those devices ever since.
Yeah, Sergeant Paul Hansen. It was the day after you had a tornado. It was the El Dorado tornado. Actually, it was the day after the El Dorado tornado, and he was out watching storms somewhere on the east side near Kellogg and Greenwich, or Kellogg and Webb. Saw the tornado. Couldn't get a hold of any of his superiors. Even tried to contact the city manager. Couldn't get a hold of the city manager. So he made that decision to go over to that air raid siren, flip it on. And that was a game changer for us. And the whole entire country, too.
Absolutely. And we've come a long way. You know, we have upgraded our system. We got more technology intertwined. But you bring up a good point. Physically having to go to the siren and push the button to activate it. There was no computer that automatically set that off back in 1958.
And tell me a little bit about the technology that we have now, because I have seen it at emergency management where 911 is located. And if you have a tornado warning that comes out, and I'm so glad that we have this technology, because as somebody who was always scared of thunderstorms, scared of tornadoes as kids, and especially those tornado sirens, and I hear it from kids all the time now, that back in the early 90s, during the Heston tornado, 1991, when Hayesville, my hometown, was hit for the first time, the whole entire county got the warning. And not everybody was in the path of this. And I think that really caused a lot of my storm anxiety, because I would push Mom to take me to the basement over at Grandma and Grandpa's all the time while my dad was out storm spotting for the county. But now as that polygon comes out, that tornado warning comes out, it is placed on a screen, and only on that screen within the tornado warned area will those sirens sound, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we use the polygon. So through technology and computer and software programs, we're able to, when the National Weather Service issues that polygon, we are an integrated public alert warning system called IPAWS County. And when that polygon is issued, it simultaneously activates the sirens, the NOAA weather radios, our cell phone wireless emergency alerts, the emergency alert system. It all goes simultaneously. And again, like you mentioned, those sirens only in that polygon will sound. We do also have, if for some reason that would not work, we are still able to activate all of the sirens, kind of as I want to call it like a panic button. So if we realize that maybe those sirens aren't going off in that polygon, if there's some sort of a software issue or something, we do have backup plans to still alert people of the impending tornado.
I think it's incredible that you're blending the old technology with the new technology. But one thing that I think is really important for us to drive home in this podcast, and any time when we're talking about tornado sirens, is that they're outdoor warning devices. They are not intended for you to hear inside your house. Like, oh, I was in my bedroom, I didn't hear the tornado sirens. Well, they're not intended for you for that. That's why you need to make sure you have multiple layers of warnings in order to stay safe.
Yep, absolutely, especially at nighttime. You know, and on Mondays we do sound them, you know, the air is clear, you know, it's sunny, there's no wind, there's no storms, but we certainly do not want to rely on those outdoor warning systems to alert us indoors. You know, when you have wind and you have rain and you've got a lot of outside noise, and then you have indoor noise with TVs on, maybe air conditioners running, again, they're not meant to be that system to alert you indoors, or for anyone outside who may not be around technology to say, hey, something is coming, you need to get indoors and get more information.
And in addition to using the tornado sirens when you're outside, you touched on this, your WEA, your wireless emergency alert. And there was one gentleman that I talked to who was impacted by the Andover tornado, and I'm going to tell you this story. So he was basically at home, and I said, did you know that there was a chance for severe weather? Because all of us were talking about it 4 days in advance, that there was going to be a time that we have to watch out for this. And all it takes one. That's all it takes is one. And that's what we got that Friday evening. And I said, what'd you do? And he was playing video games and he had his headphones on. And I said, well, did your WEA go off? That annoying tone on your phone? He says, yeah, it did. And I said, what did you do? And he said, I silenced it and I went back to playing video games. There is so much about complacency that your office deals with, and my office, my team deals with, What would you say to folks about that?
Take it seriously. It, like you mentioned, it just takes one storm. And it's really frustrating, but I understand where it comes from as well. The tornado we had in 2022, it had been 10 years since our county had had a direct impact from a tornado. So it's easy to get complacent. Um, but there's no harm in taking a pause and find out what's going on, is find out if you are in danger. We get the same thing even with some of the NOAA weather radios. People will say they woke me up and so I turned it off. Well, that's the whole point, is
Mm-hmm.
to get your attention and say, pay attention, something is going on, get more information. But yeah, just turning them off to go back to playing video games, those are the folks I get really, really concerned about getting hurt or having just seconds to seek shelter when they could have had minutes if they were just paying attention.
And I think the National Weather Service has also looked at the fact that there is they've done studies. They've done a lot of studies in the social sciences, and they have said that if your house gets hit by a tornado, a lot of times within 18 months, you'll become complacent once again. I will argue that, though, from a couple of ladies that I met that survived the Udall tornado back in 1955. And there is one lady, she sleeps every single night with her cell phone under her bed. She says, I don't care if it is wintertime, I don't care if it is the middle of summertime, but I am going to have that pillow under my bed. And throughout the whole entire year, she has her to-go bag ready to go by the back door.
Wow.
She wasn't going to mess with it. She and several of her other friends were in the community center. They were celebrating a bridal shower at that time. And she basically got to see the community center cave in on them. And other people in the community die. She's like, I'm not going to do that. And then Eileen Kistler, before she goes out for her afternoon walk, she is always making sure that she's checking like the Storm Track 3 weather app to say, can I get my walk in this afternoon? So it's definitely changed their minds because of what they lived through with that F5 tornado. And back in the 1950s, it was forbidden to say the word tornado.
Right.
Whether
Yeah.
it was in a Weather Bureau briefing, which now the Weather Bureau is the National Weather Service. But decades earlier, National Weather Service didn't want to be in the business of forecasting tornadoes and hurricanes. But we had back-to-back-to-back tornado disasters that happened here in Kansas that completely changed that. And I think, honestly, the grand finale of it was probably Sergeant Paul Hansen going over to that air raid siren and flipping things on, because then we started to see so much change through the 60s. Of course, we had to live through the 1966 Topeka tornado. And then in the 1970s, how tornado warnings were changed on TV. And then seeing the technology that we have now here in Sedgwick County, where when that warning comes out, if you're not in that polygon, you're not going to get that tornado siren outside your house activated.
Yep. And I do also want to caution folks too to not rely on that technology. We mentioned earlier having multiple ways to receive information. We know there's flaws even in the wireless emergency alert system. We participated in a national study, I forgot what it is, within the last couple of years. And we realized through that study, we did a 1 square mile radius inside the city of Wichita. We issued a polygon for that area only. And there were some folks in that square that did not receive that wireless emergency alert. And some folks have received it as far away as 10 miles outside of that polygon. So it just reminds folks that there is not 100% foolproof way to receive information, which is why you have to have multiple ways to receive it. And there's really no reason to not know this is going on. There's so much technology. You guys do fantastic. We know days in advance. A lot of times the conditions are looking like the possibility of bad weather. People just need to pay attention and then have a plan. So if it does happen, we're not scrambling to figure out, where am I supposed to go? Where's my safe shelter? Do I have what I need? If I get in the debris area, can I be on my own for a few days if first responders get overwhelmed?
Be prepared and know what to expect. Julie Stimson, Emergency Management Director of Sedgwick County, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate your time and for letting us talk about it. This is a good time of year for us to really start preparing because it's right around the corner.
And head out to one of those spotter talks too, because if you are one of those that has a lot of anxiety, some knowledge is power. That can certainly help to ease a lot of those fears, but it also gets you prepped. It gets you in the right mindset so that way you are ready when that next storm comes, because it's not a matter of if, but when.
Absolutely.
All right, Julie, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Thank you, Lisa.